starting. It's trying to start.
Are we simulcasting?
There we are. Yes, it's kicking up in just a minute. Hey, everyone, and welcome to show number 106. 106 of HospitalityDigitalMarketing.com, where we get to say unequivocally that for over 2 years, we have consistently come to you each and every week, regardless of what's going on in the world.
Regardless of whether or not we had anything to talk about.
That's right. Or anything good. But actually, this week we got some interesting stuff to talk about. I got a couple of axes to grind on a couple of the articles that we threw around.
Are we going to do What Grinds My Gears segment?
What Grinds My Gears segment. Probably so. No, we're going to try to keep the genie in the bottle to about an hour just to keep my life sane somehow. But saying that, we never do that, so we'll see how well that goes. But with me is, of course, one of my wonderful co-hosts, Mr. Everett St. Elch. I'll flip to.
Hello.
We know from everybody else's replies when we sent out the notes from last night that Robert is somewhere in the Northwest, remote from any internet connection. Tim is in Oslo, which again is his, I think, his drug cartel connection, which is because we can say that because he's not here to defend himself.
Well, now, that's probably not going to bode well for his security clearance. I'm sure he appreciates you saying that in public forum.
Yeah. In public forum, and he makes it back to New York, and they're saying, "I'm sorry, but we heard that on a live show that you're a drug cartel person." Oh, great. And then Stuart, I didn't hear back from. Did you see anything from Stuart?
I got an out of office from him when I pinged him. So
I know Holly was also indisposed.
Out in the office.
We have
so you're getting a weird show today, folks. The Lauren and Ed show always goes to weird places.
It's super tangents and little rabbit holes.
That's right.
Hey, I drew the first two topics up because they were actually in the Revenue Management Council call or board call. Some knew of it. Everyone read the article, but very few had it in their market at the time. And I thought it'd be fun to chat with you about it because TripBam is kind of an interesting beast right now. It's a revisit of what I think maybe a year and a half ago when we were doing the apps that would watch for the next best rate and then cancel and rebook you if the rate went down. They floated out there for a while, but TripBam seems to have worked its way through the problems that killed most of its competitors and has some interesting analytics stuff tied to it as well. They're using some AI modeling that it's making some revenue managers nervous because it's creating cancellation issues now.
Right. Well, and so this is something I've warned a lot of my customers of when I pick up on very predictable pricing strategies, because there are sites like this that are gaining traction that are bringing transparency to the pricing behavior of hotels. And, so you have to be cautious on how you're building your pricing strategy. Otherwise, you're going to get an echo chamber effect where if you're pricing to where you're waiting till the last minute to drop rates on mobile only, to drive direct business, that transparency could potentially shrink your already short booking window because you're training consumers that the best way to book you is days before they want to go there and on mobile. And that's one example, but transparency is something that I think hotels continue to struggle with, that the internet has brought, which is it's very easy for anyone who wants to know how a hotel prices or what a hotel does or, what their quality of service is like that's what the internet has done. It's brought transparency to anyone who's interested in looking for it.
I got the impression from the discussion from the Revenue Council that they feel like a bastion of strategy has been defiled in a way because you're dealing with negotiated rates in the instance of TripBam where they're actively chasing down companies like Boeing and so forth and saying, look, we're going to save you money because we're going to constantly recycle your booking efforts and finding better and better rates. And better negotiated rates. And as you say, transparency, where it's like maybe the negotiated rate, that bastion of strategy that revenue managers kept behind a closed door kind of thing, is now out in front and open to your point. It's like, hey, look, there's better rates that are out there.
The old CEO of EasyYield that I had hired, James Filsinger, is now the CEO of a company called Yapta. And that's exactly what they do. Like they're going after those corporate rates. And what's interesting is they actually just produced like a piece of content Yapta did, actually saying that like it no longer makes sense for these groups to do negotiated rate because in most cases you're actually losing money on doing it. It was actually a really interesting piece of content. You know, and so whenever I find interesting things like that, I go to certain clients of mine just to kind of get a feel, like what do the hotels feel about this? And I got a really interesting conversation from one of the bigger convention hotels that I work with, where they're actually trying to figure out how to take a whole new approach to not just corporate, but also group, because they think the old pricing models that existed and the old behavior of like booking groups and booking corporate no longer fit the world that we live in because of the internet. And they're actually interested in getting rid of corporate rates and like group blocks as their own independent rate, and more interested in doing some type of price attachment to bar with discount rules around it.
Right. Right.
And they were actually asking me, they were like, so how do you think we could do that? I'm like, well, technically super easy. Getting that to work without having to get your entire market to jump on that bandwagon, impossible.
Yeah. I guess, I mean, if you look at the old modeling where said same company would sit down with said same hotel organization and say, we're going to represent X amount of business with you over a course of a period of time. And because we're bringing this level or quantity of business, we want to negotiate these value propositions and so forth. The cards, so to speak, that the hotelier had was some ambiguity or lack of clarity from the other side of the table as to where exactly their value pricing could be, what they're willing to give up and keep their profit margins and so forth. So there was this negotiation because each had kind of chips in the game. They had stake in the game. Yep. Now you're shaving that veneer off, and the company can literally walk up to a hotel and say, look, in the worst of business times, back in 08, 9, 10, I could walk up to you 2 days out and block 100 of your 200 rooms if I could, because you were so needing business. And I could wipe out my attrition clauses and I could wipe out my conditionals and everything else, and you'd still take whatever business I could give you. In a way, those companies now have that same leverage going, look, this rate you gave me negotiated is really not a benefit to me when I'm out in the market with this type of tool like TripBam that says, no, I can find you 100 rooms at this X rate, or with your competitor in market at X rate, better than what I negotiated 6 months ago when I thought I was going to be doing business with you for the entire year.
Well, let's be honest.
A lot of
you don't even need a TripBam. Like this isn't disruptive. No. What they're doing, like what these companies are doing, Yapta, TripBam, players like this, they're just educating the world that if you're leaning on an old methodology of making sure your staff travels effectively, you're leaving a ton of money on the table. And in more cases than not, the studies, like I put up the Yapta study, like the whole premise here is you don't run into a lot of cases where you can't get a hotel room in most cities.
No.
And in the cases that you do run into a higher rate, it's offset by the many other cases of travel where you achieve a lower rate. So, yeah, this is something I've been warning hotels of for a long time, is all rates and all behavior will soon be completely transparent. And here's the thing, there is an answer. So let me soapbox this. We need to stop focusing on our efforts on a 90-day window, and we need to stop shifting to, oh my gosh, what do we do to fill this one thing? And we need to shift our focus to long-term strategy. Long-term strategy that allows you to say, we kill it so much because we burn great long-term that little blips we will not behaviorally panic on. And that's hard. It's easier said than done. I get it. I know. But you get out of this cycle you'd get out of this cycle of panic. It would change the way you approach business. It would change the way you do blocks and releases and things like that on group, because that's what really jams up a lot of hotels, right? An unexpected loss of uptick in a group or something like that leaves them with inventory that they didn't plan to have. But if you actually took a long-term strategy approach, you can make it to where you're doing it the right way. Like you're not using a predictable like pricing fluctuation that fluctuates like aggressively on a regular basis. And that's the problem. Like Yapta, TripBam, companies like this have picked up on the fact that hotels are in cadences on their pricing strategies.
Yes.
And they're oversimplistic compared to the amount of fluctuation in rate.
This is probably not going to be a positive thing to say.
Surprise! Lauren's going negative.
Negative on this one. But I think
the AI boards must just hate when you talk.
I know, right? They must just be like, really, what? Why you do this? Why? No, I'm not. This isn't for the HSBA Revenue Managers Board or anybody in particular. To them, I think as a genre of people, revenue managers have really hidden behind the mystique of what they do, and have taken credit for more than that they should have on some of their strategies because they were allowed to automate or do certain things that make them look like they made right decisions when in fact they were auto response kind of things that were just triggered and so forth. And I refer to the stock market in that sense as an example of, when this happens in a microsecond, all these automated buy sell calls come through before anybody of a human nature goes, wait a minute, that was a stupid little Twitter comment from Trump that caused Amazon stock to drop $6 billion in 30 seconds because everybody triggered off on it. And management structure things are going to be and have been done where if X happens, Y is reactionary. And these softwares like TripBam, they're coming in and analyzing and causing cancellations and rebooks and so forth are going to start triggering automated or triggered response rate changes that were not intended the way they were first built. I'm going to talk to a couple of revenue companies that I work with on a consulting basis of possibly digging into a research value of, can we look back at some of the cancellations programs according to channel? Have we seen a variance come through these? Mainly the negotiator, has it spread into other channels? And if so, has it created rate disparities or rate issues for you because you're getting this cancel rebook price? Right. Look at the rebooks. Look at the rebooks to the cancellations. Look at your cancellation cycle. Is you're getting an enormous amount of cancellations and negotiated rates when you do a rate price variance on your bar. That means these systems are already infected into your methodology. So what are you going to do, as you said, long-term strategy? What is your long-term value strategy play? You should be introducing your pricing modeling in such a time cycle that you're at the time that you want it, not because you're reacting to flutters and changes in rate and so forth in short term. So
right.
I hope I can convince a couple of these companies to take a deeper look into this since they have the access to the data to do so. So we'll see.
Yeah, interesting.
Yeah, the other article that got popped up in discussion with them that got a mixed bag of results was the Alibaba venture with Marriott for China. I don't know whether you followed that one pop through or not. It's a short-term relationship. It's not a long-term one. But it's a short-term relationship. The Marriott's offering booking through the Alibaba platform.
I think it's a smart test, honestly.
Mm-hmm.
But I'm going to tell you already how it's going to go. So Alibaba, one of the stronger retail sites in the world. And I'll tell you right now, it's going to go well. And you're just going to have a new OTA. And they're going to get what they deserve for being able to bring demand to a hotel, which is going to be more than the hotels want to pay. Do you disagree with any of that?
No, I don't disagree with any of it. I think Marriott went into it thinking this is a great brand identity on a singularity platform. I mean, the point
it's a good idea. I'm not saying it's a bad idea.
Yes.
And I honestly think it's smart for Marriott to be putting bets out like this. This is what, these are hard things to do, right? I mean, you're not talking about, some of the gimmicky things that we continually chuckle about that, companies focus on. Like, this is a out of the ether. No one seems to have done this before. Marriott's doing it at a scale that's a really interesting test. And if this is the culture of the bigger Marriott, that they're going to, test bets like this, eventually some of these bets are going to pay off in like substantial difference in competitive landscape.
Yeah, no, I thought it was a smart move of anything, if not for anything, the brand value awareness that I think Marriott's one of the key reasons why they're doing it. I don't think on the short term they're looking for the real revenue generation. Of course they want it, but I don't think that was the real key to it, as it was exposure.
Well, it's too short term. It's too short term for that to be like a big number, because I'm sure this was a ton of work. Right. Like, I'm sure a ton was poured into this.
Yeah.
But I also think everyone kind of looks at this, goes, well, will Alibaba be able to sell rooms? Yeah, of course they will.
Sure. Yeah. That's the easiest aspect of it, because they already are multifaceted as to what they sell anyway. I mean, anybody that has had the pleasure experience of going to China, you don't have this diversification, this fragmentation of platforms. There's WeChat, there's Alibaba, there's very specific platforms that do a host of things that multiple platforms here outside of the China market have. And so, the fact that Marriott can be on that platform, be identified with that platform, do business on that platform, I think will raise the awareness that they're hoping for, even in the short-term relationship they have. But to your point, I think the long-term loss to them will be that opens that door that you are creating another OTA relationship, that you are mitigating your ability to sell yourself in that market by having to mandate that you go through places like Alibaba at that point. Because
but again, like, that's not necessarily negative. I mean, there's some positive to that and all of that. And, I think what it is, it's a smart bet for them short term. Long term, it may become a little bit painful from time to time. But the bottom line is as a brand, and as a brand that's asset light, this is the new thing. Like, these brands are completely different entities than they were before, because they're not hoteliers anymore.
No, they're not hoteliers anymore.
Right. So they have to figure out what their role is in the world now that they're not hoteliers. And so they should all be experimenting with things like this. And they should probably be really focused on having really smart strategy people kind of gaming all the different results that can come from these different things, so they can stay ahead of it. Because they're now that they're asset light, they're closer to an Expedia, Booking.com, Alibaba than they are to a hotel, because they don't own hotels. They may operate hotels, but again, it's not the same. Like, they're a different entity, and they're gonna need to change just because of the fact that they're a different entity now. They're franchising systems.
I was talking to a friend as I was going through this travel, people catching up with me on the phone and so forth. And they were asking me how I like being independent and doing my own thing and have my own business and so forth. And I said, I compare it a lot to a management company versus a hotel ownership. And they said, what do you mean? And I said, well, keeping it in the vein of what I like to do, management company has a guaranteed check, and they have no skin in the game. They could be told to F off and they walk away, and you know what, they got to find a new client. That's okay. But when you own the building, you got to make sure that payroll's met, the lights go on, and the doors stay open. And it isn't something that you just walk away without some great loss to it. I'm not saying the management company's losing a contract isn't a great loss, but it is not the same loss as losing what it is that you own compared to what it is that you service. Right. And so I said, working for an agency or working for a hotel ownership group, that was a steady income. You were defined, quantified, and that's what it was. But when you're on your own, you have different priorities. So, payroll has to get hit before you cut a check kind of mentality. It's a different world. And so to your point with Marriott, they're getting away from that ownership perspective. They are actually away from that ownership perspective, minus a handful of, legacy value ownerships or something they still have. But they are completely into the service providing aspect, which is, they're always going to find a new client and not worry about the brick and mortar. But yeah, I think with the China market, it is a smart move on their part because it kind of shortcuts a lot of the requirements necessary to do business in China.
Yep.
with the the whole banking and everything. They're immediately into an established relationship in China. It gives them an immediate scalability of distribution, exposure. I think it's a very smart move on that
Yeah, I think
part.
it's a great move.
Uh,
So wait, so while we're on China, there was a piece of Chinese news that didn't make it into your list, and I was surprised. Anbang being forced by China to sell their foreign hotel assets.
Yeah, I did. I saw it, didn't grab it. I got off on this other tangent. You're absolutely right. Please talk about it. I didn't even get to read the article. I just saw the headline.
I think it's a political warning sign that China. So, I mean, anyone who's in any form of understanding of what's been happening in real estate, especially in markets that are seen as investment grade markets, know that Chinese investors are really hard to be up against in a buying mode. And the reason being is there, it appears, at least, I don't want to speak for them or anything like that, but it appears that their goal is actually just a land bank and not actually be very focused on profit, more securing capital outside of the reach of their government. So in recent years, we've all seen that some of these large Chinese conglomerates have started basically buying the world. And driving down, the returns that you can hope to get if you're in there trying to buy against them. So I know in like Australia, Chinese investors have been buying real estate in Australia, looking to get a 2 or 3% cap, like a 2 cap, which is like horrible. Like it's losing money, but it's to park their money. So I think picking on the large entities that did it in a large way is sending a warning sign that China is going to start locking down this behavior to stop their capital from fleeing the borders. And I just think it creates an interesting problem. Like, so let's talk about the Waldorf Astoria, New York, which was sold for just a insane amount of cash, because it is just such an iconic piece of New York real estate. I think Hilton bought like Park 55 and like 6 or 7 other properties from the proceeds of selling the Waldorf Astoria in New York. And so I look at, so we look at this situation. So China came out and forced a sale of hotel assets. Anbang's not going to be able to sell it for more than they bought it for. Because everyone out there is going to be like, well, you have to sell it.
Yeah, your negotiating chip is kind of gone. It's not like, oh, I'm trying to get my margin off of it. It's like, no, you bought too high, and now you got to get rid of. So yeah.
So it'll be interesting to see what the next purchase and who buys it. That I also find interesting on who buys it. Does Park Hotels take a swing at picking it up, bringing it back into the portfolio of their just highly valuable assets? Does a Middle East investor pick it up? Like, who's going to pick up the Waldorf Astoria in New York?
Yeah, no, to your point with the Chinese market, because even when I was over there, and this goes back several months, there was, even on the government monitored news, the concern of the financial infrastructure of China, the overinflated value of the artificially sustained value of the currency, the yuan, and how a lot of Chinese businesses were trying to diffuse the potential hollow shell by going out and doing the international investments. But it's counterproductive to the stability of the currency to have the currency leave the country. So, to your point, then this is one of those first sticks in the sand that says, we're going to allow it, but we're not allowing it free reign. This is a line you can't draw, and then you have to resend back to it. You can't be, whatever the cost, whatever the price, ridiculous price as it was, we're going to buy whatever it is just to get the money out of a market and get it into a different currency value. So yeah, definitely.
And the impact, I think, is going to I don't think it's really hit yet, because I don't think everyone understands how far China's going to go with this, but man, if you're building a skyscraper in Miami right now,
Mm-hmm.
I'd be very nervous because Miami is way overbuilt.
Oh, yeah.
And the buyers have been previously was South America, and that's been, drying up, and China.
Yes.
And
Yes.
so and skyscrapers aren't like an overnight thing. That's a 10, 15 year, you know,
Mm-hmm.
churn until you can actually start getting revenue back. And my gosh, if you have a skyscraper coming online next year or the year after, man, you got to be sitting there going, "Oh God, China, please don't, please don't."
Well,
Yeah,
well, you mentioned. I mean, I bring up Miami, and I just like you're holding your breath because they're artificially maintaining pricing in the market. I'm not saying for hotels, I'm talking about for their builds, their real
yeah,
estate.
just real estate in general.
Right. They refuse to sell less than or fill less than for the buildings unless it's at a certain price that they have designated, and they're letting it sit empty or letting a lot of stuff sit empty. Massively expensive projects simply to have that bluff that says no, it's worth this much, and everybody's like, no, it's not, and so nobody's buying anything, and so you have this amazing build downtown that all this other retail and businesses were going to suck with it because of the new people that were there, and nothing has started because nobody is crossing that line of price saying, "Oh, I'll pay that price." Sure, they're saying no.
Yep.
I know House of Cards. You're going to have to blink and sell it for less than what you're saying you're selling it for now, and so if it doesn't, it's going to create a massive ripple effect of problems because then all these delayed factors of lease terms and agreements, retail space, and all the reasons that people would buy it for begin to fray off. And now the people are like, see, I'm not going to buy it because now all that retail space you promised me isn't opening. All those restaurants aren't coming in. All that infrastructure isn't there. I'm not going to pay that price.
Right.
And so, yeah, they're on a borrowed time scale, I think, with all that kind of falling apart.
Yep.
And to your point, yes, with China not being in the market and the Mideast being a little tighter about what they do, they're keeping them. They're almost like as if they're keeping the money in. It's the Dubais of the world. It's the Qatars of the world. They're infrastructuring themselves now. They're not just always going out and buying country.
Yep.
Brain. Yeah.
So interesting stuff. I just thought that was since we were on China, and
yep.
Thought
good point.
Just a fun, just add on since it is one of the most iconic hotels in the world. It happens to be like the one called out.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I got to put the TripAm link up. Hey, I threw a couple other articles in just for a couple of conversations.
I like the one. I'm sure you can guess.
Wait, hold on. I'm scrolling down. I got it on a half screen here. You talking about the OTA one?
Oh no, I mean absolutely. That's
or
cool.
The ad agency one.
I'm talking about Facebook. Building tools to actually start creating legitimate transaction and tracking for influence marketing and brand.
Like I didn't scroll down enough. Of what I grabbed. Yep.
Yeah.
All right, let's grab that one.
Yeah. So I think that's a really interesting.
Let's grab that one.
Yeah, let's put that one up. Hold on, I'm looking for it now because I lost my window.
Popped up.
Yeah, so the premise is, that Facebook has obviously picked up on the fact that influencer marketing and brand paid influencer posts are a thing. Some of it is really scammy. Which there's been a lot of interesting articles in like Digiday and things like that about, how scammy influencers can be and how hard it is to just go by what you used to use as previous metrics, because like a lot of them are bot networks and, have interactions that are just complete AI driven interactions. They're not real. So the fact that Facebook is going to basically build the first step of infrastructure for a monetization plan on influencer posts and everything, I think is incredibly interesting. It's super beneficial to flip to because it will, first of all, uncover that there's not a lot of great influencer marketing available.
Right. Yes.
There's a lot of influencer marketing available, but there's not a lot of great influencer marketing available. And it will draw more attention to the value of a micro influencer.
Yes, and to your point too, is like the influencer market has been kind of an artificial hype, I think, in some ways, where people that are supposedly influencers are really more than just those who have cultivated audience numbers, not even good audiences, just audience numbers, and then have pandered that to people as a means of distributing for a fee or cost relationship. And they're really not making an impact because they keep relying on the vanity metrics of look how many people viewed from what I did, look how many people was it displayed to kind of thing, but there was no tangible ROI aspect to it as much as you do with more traditional marketing. It's like, I'm building your branding, I'm building your awareness and so forth, and this is all hype stuff. Yeah, there is a reality to some of that being accurate, but the weight of the value of it has way been overemphasized. And the influencers, as they are the ones that have been overemphasizing it. Like, oh, I really contributed to your revenue this month because I exposed you to so many people that follow me because of what it is that I do. Right. And it's, no, you didn't. And no, you don't. And no, you have no more direct influence per se than you with your FlipTube with a friend of mine that I follow and care about, posting their experience at a place that they just stayed at. That gets front and center of my attention 10 times better than somebody I'm following because of a generic interest that they happen to represent.
Yeah. Yeah. But Facebook is just, man, like they're just on top of like riding these things. And of course, the smart people who look at what Facebook's doing there go, this is about to get more expensive. Because once Facebook understands how to measure it and report it, then they're going to understand how to charge for it. And the cost of doing it is definitely going to go up.
And I can imagine I kind of wonder why Facebook hasn't done it right. Well, actually, they have started doing it, is using their ability to redefine the audience out base, using that as a scalable for outside marketing from their walled garden. I know they've started on some aspects, but I'm sure that's a new that would be an expanding monetization on their part too to keep pushing.
Yeah. So, well, I mean, because they're not going to be able to keep growing user base, right? I mean, you have almost everyone.
No, very true.
Unless you figure out how to make people live longer, which ironically they are trying to figure that out. They're at the scale now where, like average life of a human being actually impacts their growth rate because they have so much of the humans on Earth. It's insane. It's amazing. Again,
it goes back to something I saw on the Today Show this morning. And it's to one of the other articles about AI intelligence and so forth I want to hit on, which is one of my warning things that I wanted to say. But I'm going to throw up, just to make it a little bit light statement, I was going to throw up the minimum wage thing because it's kind of funny. I go back and forth about the minimum wage discussion from a business perspective and then also from a individual perspective as to the validation of expanding it or not expanding it, mandating it versus letting the market push it. Because I get mixed about that. I'm strangely enough to say, I'm actually a registered Republican. I believe in the principle of what a Republican used to be, which was a smaller amount of government for benefit of people to a degree. But I'm also a very left-wing Republican, slightly on Democratic side, that it has to be, its mandate is to support, I have to support all people. To me, government is supposed to take care of those who can't take care of themselves or that need help to be taken care of. That's the mandate of the government. But anyway, the reason why I say that is I don't like a lot of rules. I drive a motorcycle. I am not without a helmet, but I don't feel the government should be the one to tell me that I need to wear a helmet in that sense. So I'm not a big one for a lot of rules. I think there should be common sense to it. I think minimum wage should be market driven, but we are so convoluted in CEO salaries and so minimalistic as to work that something like a government has to step in and say, we have to bring up a baseline somewhere so that you can't keep raping out people with their incomes being below a living wage.
The tough thing. And so like, I try to look at this because I got to be honest with you. I personally have not been an employer who ever had any employee close to minimum wage.
Exactly.
And part of that's because skilled talent is far less expensive to your business than unskilled talent. Right. And I also believe that, like, my job as an entrepreneur is to create economy, not suck off of it. So I've always taken pride in doing that. And, so like I look at Flip2. Flip2 gets some great local economic grants because we pay 150% of the area median income as our average pay. Now, the sad part about that is we pay good. But I mean, it's not like we're Apple throwing out 6-figure salaries everywhere. We're a small company, but it's a sad state on how little the Orlando market pays the average employee. It's a tough thing. So here's one of the challenges I see in this whole thing is companies like Walmart, which I think Walmart is the devil. I've always thought they were the devil. I've lived in multiple areas that they've completely destroyed by putting stores in there. And the reason I think they're the devil is they drop consumer expectation and get you obsessed on the deal. But that's at the expense of high-paying jobs. Like, I lived in areas that used to have a good series of boutique businesses that served needs, and Walmart came in, Home Depot came in, and wiped out those businesses. And now those business owners are making peanuts working for Walmart. Right. So, and it's actually interesting. Like, I saw Trump's note about Amazon costing jobs. Actually, Amazon's created kind of a resurgence in boutique businesses, filling the hole. And part of that's because they put the hurt on some of these big box retailers by just changing the expectation.
Right.
You know, I think if you're going to pick on anyone, pick on Walmart. Like, they're the devil. So why I'm bringing this up is, so you force Walmart to raise minimum wage. Walmart's not going to eat that. Like, it's not going to be like, oh, okay, we're less profitable. No, they're just going to price it in to the product. So then you raise the cost of consumer goods, which will have zero effect on the wealthy, right? Like, they won't care. They won't feel it. But it actually makes the amount that you increased the person making minimum wage stay in the same exact situation. Right.
I think there's two arguments.
It's tough. Like, it's tough. The answer is tough because if you just do a blanket force of everyone has to make $15 an hour, well, here's what you get. You get automated kiosks at McDonald's. And now you have an entire series of people who are struggling to find their first job while they're in high school to get the skills they need to become a bigger, contributor to the economy. Right. So that's a problem. You have no business is going to lose money over their salaries. They're just pricing it. You price it into your product, or you don't, or you change, right? Like, you find a different way to do business. And, it's hard to say what the fix is on this. It's not, you're talking about, like, it's a really tough economical stance to look at. And the challenge is like, what is the right way to fix the problem of the people who are stuck in the lower income tiers? And I don't know if the answer is to pay them more. I think the answer is to give them an easier path up the ladder. And so, and I've actually had some, I want to bring up a point that I've talked about quite a bit with some of the groups I meet with regularly is I honestly think where you start is the way financial aid works for degrees in college. And they should work like equity mortgages work in a house, which is, depending on the degree you're going after, you can only borrow up to a certain percentage of the average income that degree will create for you. Because the problem is with this easy access to school and easy access to school money, because you can't bankrupt out of it, a lot of schools are not doing people any favors. They've created these fluff garbage degrees that people take, and it does nothing to help them in their career, in their earning potential, and actually it ties a weight around them and throws them in water. If your passion is to be a history teacher and your potential, first 5 years of average income is, 40 grand a year, you shouldn't be allowed to rack up $250,000 in debt.
Right.
Being trained
Right.
to do that job. And the way you control costs is you put a controlled access of money to the product, and the schools will be forced to actually start pricing their degrees differently.
Mm-hmm. No, I think you're onto something, because a couple of things. One is the schools, to your point, they're not just not doing anybody a favor, they're actually doing them a disservice, because they are not overly inflating, but they're certainly double dipping. They're expanding the cost to get their magic, and including the students as they go up into the hierarchies of further and further education by getting free labor, basically, to produce a lot of well-represented aspects of their university or their college format. And you have companies that are paying charter memberships that most of the money goes to the college. Nothing, if anything, it just really pays for the value proposition, whatever the student is working on in academia for the university or the institution. And to that end, with an insurmountable price tag of debt that, to your point, they came out of it as anthropological leader of 20th century such and such debt. And it's like, where are you going to get a job? I mean, yes, it's great that there's somebody that's keeping track of that stuff and that is dedicated to that uniqueness. But there should have been a goal path to that says, once I left, I was going to be working for the Detroit Archaeological Society, and I'm going to be making X number of dollars, and they're going to be contributing back to my costing. But I mean, maybe to your idea is that if you're doing these positions, there's actually less cost to get these certain degrees and more cost to get the others. But I think the other aspect is the polarity. To what you said, the path of income being made more available to people as they work through the ranks. Not a glass ceiling. There's not even a curtain. There is a brick freaking wall between those who work at Walmart and those who run Walmart. And the ones that run Walmart are astronomically paid, as most CEOs in the U.S. culture are. There is the disparity of CEO incomes to everybody else. You look globally and statistically, there is disparities everywhere. Obviously, being at the top of an organization warrants more, but not at the disparity of a chasm between what we have in the United States. Yep. So we should, rather than try to say that there's a baseline to push up, because to your point, the companies are just going to raise costs. I mean, that was one of the arguments you hear when people talk about this is like, well, I'm not for the minimum wage increase because that means everything's just going to get more expensive because everybody's just going to raise prices. And to that point, they're right. The prices are going to get raised.
And it nullifies. But here's the thing. When you do it as a blanket and you don't fix the underlying problem that's causing disparity, that's what it does. It does nothing. Like you're just inflating.
It is.
Yeah. But I think
if you
fix, I think there's a lot of issues in the U.S. education system. One, I think, and I don't know how it happened when it happened. I'm sure if Robert Cole was on here, he'd have an entire prospectus dating back to the 1800s. But skilled trades are treated like lesser jobs. But if you are lucky enough to be a sanitary worker in New York City, you make a ton of money. If you are a plumber that has whatever they use for their ranking, but have hit the highest ranks of plumbing, you make more than doctors. Mm-hmm. If you're a master electrician, you make more than lawyers, right? And I don't understand why the public school system has gone away from educating these skill sets at the young age. Because here's the thing. If you're not entrepreneurial, and if, let's say, you're not above a certain IQ, there are certain things that are just outside your reach. But that does not mean you do not have a path to prosperity. But I think the problem is everyone focuses that the path to prosperity is this Walmart CEO grade of salary. But I mean, the bottom line is, like, I know plenty of people that are very skilled tradespeople that make a lot more money than some very smart lawyers I know and very smart doctors I know. You have to find what's right for you, and there needs to be a path for you to discover that, and that needs to be when you're young. That needs to be in our school system. Yes. I was very anti-school going through school, and one of the reasons I was very anti-school is my problem with it is I felt that a lot of what they were teaching me was completely unimpactful to what my life was going to be. And so I phoned it in. I was a student because it's not very hard. But the bottom line is I thought it was a joke. Like I thought the fact that they didn't teach you about balancing checkbooks and what credit means, that they didn't teach you useful skills. All they taught you was basic knowledge that if you continued on that track of education, you could be a teacher.
Right.
I mean, that's...
I can give you a great example of that when I was going through college. One of the reasons why I picked business major was because the classes didn't usually start until 10 a.m. So I didn't have to worry about getting up early. But unfortunately, economics was 8 a.m. And I was perpetually late to the last one of the class. Sometimes after the class had even started. And my professor at the time, and I remember him to this day, he was a great man. He ended up being a dear friend afterwards, Professor Oberhofer. I would walk in and he'd say, "You're late to my class." And I had the cocky college attitude, like, "Hey, I pay your salary. What do you care?" You know.
By the way, never does saying that to anyone in any situation. It never ends well.
No, but he was always just great about it. And I touted off to him one time when I was really later than I should have been. And I said, "Look, this is bogus." I said, the premise of all economics is that if all things were constant, let's look at this one variable. We all start, and you even said this to us, is that not everything is constant. Nothing can be constant. Everything changes. So we are creating an artificial analysis to an unrealistic expectation to an inconclusive decision. So this class means nothing. And he's like, "Yes, but it's the process of doing it that you need to learn." And actually, that's right. That was the get to point where I'm like, yeah, somewhere you got to put a stick in the sand that says, if we just stop for a second, sliced it, looked at it, what variable are we wanting to pick? And so the whole point of the class until that moment where I was like, yeah, okay, I got it. I'll be on time. And after that, I was always on time. And like, dear friend, wonderful man, passed away a few years back, which was sad because he was that kid bull, knowing that he had to get to the point that eventually I had to get that euphoric moment of like, oh, I get it. But wage thing, there's uncertainty to be the business, be it stuff or free need to be in the income benefit company of ownership into what gets done, so the CEOs can be a little bit more contained. Because no CEO, the income level doesn't keep a CEO. I mean, they screw up a company and walk away with a golden parachute. And meanwhile, you get Joe Schmo that's below minimum wage. One of the arguments I don't like about minimum wage is like, well, there needs to be, we shouldn't raise the rate because there's starter jobs. And I agree with that. Like you said, high school kids need some basic experience level to be able to work forward. But you have people that are trying to support families and they're on a starter job. I mean, that's the only job they can get. To your point, again, some people are limited into their options. And you're... they're not working. They're working their asses off. They cannot get ahead because they're behind. Walmart, again, having to put them on assisted living because they can't afford to live. That's bogus. That should never be the case at that point.
Right.
But
no, Band-Aids are bad. Fixes are good. But the challenge, here's the problem. Fixes cause you to have to go back to, well, what's wrong? Oh, you have to tell someone something was wrong.
Or the profit margin isn't going to be there as much as it was before. You get a profit, but not as much profit. Yeah.
Right. that's not going to happen. Like that's not business. Business has to maintain, if they're investor backed, they have to maintain a profit growth, not a shrink because something was forced on them.
Right.
So yeah. So I think the fix is fix education, and like you'll go a long way, because I think the education system is very broken and has lost its way. And I think that's been going on for a long time. At least it used to be really hard to get above a certain level of education, so those used to pay really well. That doesn't happen anymore because everyone has a master's degree.
Right. Well, again, no worry. We have a great director, or whatever her name is, of education now. I'm sure she'll get this all straightened out for us. It'll be a good thing.
She can fix it. Yeah. She can fix it.
Yeah.
So anyway, so as promised, when it's a Lauren and Ed show, we completely went to fixing the world's problems. Oversimplified.
We are solving world peace right now as we speak.
Exactly.
Yes. Over clarity to purpose. Hey, I'm throwing this one up. This was my axe grinder. This was the to take back some digital control. And I don't know. I get to say that now, that for 2 years we've been yelling this for a while. The over reliance on third parties, the complacency of the relationship, the blindness to what's being done for you. And I'm actually taking to heart where I was saying that I was going to make an article about the 5 things that agencies never want you to know that you should know about dealing with an agency. It's actually up to about 10 things. The shitload of stuff you're dealing with. Some of this said now. An example of this. It's an email campaign was built for one of my clients, and on a platform that they pay for, and they paid for, I'm sure, the images that were used to create the ad campaign. And what they got was a JPEG image that was used in the email. They didn't get to retain the images that they paid for, the licensing for mass distribution, nor the image itself. They didn't get any of the fonts or any of the things that I'm sure they paid for to have access to have it built for them. But what they were left with was a flat little multi-image thing that was used in their email campaign. So they didn't get the long-term benefit of what it could cost to create that. So I would say to anybody that's working with an agency, in your mandate relationship with them, because this article is kind of superficial. It's not really a in-depth thing. It's more of an opinion perspective kind of thing, is own what's being built for you, but own what was built, used to build it as well. If you're going to be using images, those images turn into your images. If you're going to use content or graphics or anything, it's because they're owned by you. The article is referring to how the dynamic of the contract is changing as to who owns the intellectual property. And I thought it was just absolutely mind-numbingly bizarre that the big idea in this article was, add in there the right to audit. Are you freaking kidding me? That you would have to actually add the ability to rightfully, until I'm doing audits for some companies, I'm doing them opaquely because they don't want their agency to know that somebody else is looking over their shoulder as to what they're doing for them.
Why?
Which I find,
Why?
Exactly. Like you want that.
You're in a bad place if you're not willing to tell your vendor that you're just doing a sanity check, that what they're doing is aligned with what you were looking for. Like,
it's not a relationship, it's a business relationship.
Right.
It's I trust, but it's verifiable trust.
Yep. Yeah.
All right. I'm going to trust you to do what I'm paying you to do, but I'm also going to verify that what you're doing for me is what I'm paying for.
Right.
And you should have that right no matter. And it's funny, but there's agencies, I deal with them now, and we've talked about them as well, where they keep, and that's proprietary information. I can't share your keyword list. What do you mean you can't share the keyword list? That's the client's keyword list. Yeah, but if you saw my keyword list, then you would know our strategy. Hence the point of why I'm asking. I'm trying to find out whether you're doing the right thing or not doing the right thing, because your client, our client, doesn't know the difference between your strategy keyword list or whether it's good or bad. That's what I'm here for. I'm here to look at what you're doing to tell them, hey, they're doing knockout work, man. Better than I could or better than anybody else could. But that's the worry, is that they think they're going to lose business if they have to share it. So my little axe to grind.
Yeah, listen, you should be happy it's starting to get talked about.
Hey, in that sense, yeah, I got to say that at least it's coming up into conversation that's a point to it. All right.
So, I mean, I will say, like, our interesting thing is we have identified because we can tell. There are some agencies that are special, like that are doing amazingly good things consistently across their properties, because we see a disproportionate amount of direct booking business on those properties than we do with similar properties of other efforts. So there, and this is something I always want us to be careful of, is like when we do uncover the bad, that we also don't forget that there is real good there. Like there's good in the industry. There are players that are performing just at a completely different level than the rest of the industry. And this is where I'm just going to warn anyone who's looking at anything. If it seems expensive, ask yourself this: is it expensive because I still don't completely understand what it's going to do for me? Or is it just expensive because it's not going to do for me what I need it to do? And the reason I say that is, like, I'm just going to go back to EasyYield. EasyYield was the most expensive channel manager on the market. And there was a reason, because we poured a ton of money into research and development. Like, we poured more in research and development than companies 15 times our size. And the reason we did that is because we were obsessed with progressing the industry. And hotels would go, you know what? I get it. I like you. I like your support. I like your product. It's superior, but this one's just so cheap that it's good enough. And what's happened, what's interesting is, because I have no chips in that game anymore, is everyone's realizing that, when I don't pay the right amount, I don't get the necessary features or support that I actually need to be successful in my business. So you have to understand that. Like, you have to think through that correctly, and there is always the bottom line that you get what you pay for.
Yes, it is. When it's funny how you try to negotiate prices, but there's a point, and I remember to this day, when I went to the agency in Dallas, when I first went to Dallas, was walking away from the table from somebody who wants to do business with us. And I said, well, because what you're asking is, we gave you a price of what we're saying. I broke it all down as to the time consumption of resources that were being allocated to the proposal. I wasn't trying to be vague about it. It wasn't arbitrary numbers rounded out to make it look pricey or anything like that. It's like based on time consumptions, usabilities, functions, processes. These are the time things of how many people. If you're going to have a call and there's 5 of us on that call, that's a 5 on our side of the conversation. And that commitment is of high-level people and so forth. Like, there's a cost to us for having their time spent for it. And so they start saying, well, what if I could do this and get that? And then I have the threshold that we can then ensure that what we're doing for you is positive, because you've cut it too thin. You cut down to the quick. It's not going to be what you think it is just because the price fits your budget. It actually get less value, less proposition, and less security in what we're doing, and we're not going to do that.
Right.
It's
an
interesting conversation to have,
and it's a tough, and so here's the thing I've always done with my pricing. I don't move on my pricing. Why? Because I don't gouge. Mm-hmm. Like, I am always obsessed with providing an immense amount of value for whatever it is I'm being paid for. That's always been my focus. And I have no problem with people who see no value in the things that I'm providing as value. Like, that's fine. You don't get it today, you'll get it eventually.
Right.
But I also like the fact that the ones who do see the value get the great benefit of being successful, because I'm providing a very high quality service. Right. And that's been the truth in EasyYield. It's been the truth in Flip2.
Yeah. No, and it shows. It shows.
So,
I had one other one I was going to throw up real quick, because it lends itself to a little something from this morning. At first I got this article pulled down because I thought it was an interesting advancement for Airbnb to have this new platform of usability. And then on the Today Show this morning, I got like a chill down my back when they were going through this. Technology is helping customer service. And they gave the examples of how all the major players, per se, they use Delta. They use JetBlue. JetBlue is using Gladly. Delta was using something else. And the guys that they're interviewing from the prospective companies are talking about how, yes, we're integrating everything we know about you on Facebook. We're looking at your profile of you as a customer, connecting that with your social profiles and any emails you have. And I'm sitting there, they're putting this candy wrapper on it of customer service improvement. And I'm sitting there saying, and I did your individuality down to, because now know how the gate agents will have, think of it in simplistic terms like cloud. Now I'm going to be to people and looking down at the screen and saying, yeah, you're not really that, because you don't talk much on social and you don't buy much from us. And I don't really give a rat's ass if you do business with us again.
So that's
I'm not
the
going
thing.
to. Meanwhile, somebody else walks up and is like, "Ooh, you bitch a lot. Yeah, we're going to go put you in the upgrade." That's what's in
so there's
my mind right now, because
so
that information is going to be
like,
more and more usable in more and more real time.
There's a lot you can do.
This is my what do you think?
So there's a lot you can do with tech, but it doesn't mean you should, right? So first of all, I'll warn any company that's using this invasive form of customer discovery to try and provide better customer service. You're going to have a large amount of people. You're going to have a couple of groups that are going to be problems for you.
Okay.
You're going to have Can you hear me, Lauren? Did you freeze up? You're really like. Why don't you try popping out and popping back in, Lauren? Because you've been
right.
Huh. I think it's on your end though. All right. How about now?
Yes.
All right. Okay.
Gotcha.
So any of these companies that are using this very privacy invasive approach to provide better customer service, my warning is realize it's gonna breed two negative aspects. You're gonna get a group of people who will refuse to do business with you because they know you invade their privacy. So that's one. Accept that.
And
so I'm guessing. All right. Lauren, how about now?
Yeah, you've been fine. You've been fine. I lost you for a minute, but there, I got you back.
Okay. So you're going to create a group of people who won't do business with you because they know you invade their privacy in order to do business with them. And then you're going to get the group of people that know how to game your algorithm. And they're going to get the best treatment from you because they're going to know what to have out there to trick you into thinking that they're your sweet spot.
Gotcha. We're good.
Yeah. Yep. Yeah, I think it's you, buddy. But yeah, let's wrap it up. No, I think this was great. You can find out about Flip2 at flip.to, and you can find out about me by looking on social, Edward St. Onge. And Lauren, how can people find you? Wonderful. Because we, because because it always goes weird. That's right. You bet. Thanks, Lauren.